What if the moment your child said, "It's okay," was the moment the world realized how broken it had made you? The rain poured endlessly over the small roadside diner as James sat by the window, his little daughter Emma beside him, her shoes muddy, her pink jacket soaked. She tried to smile, swinging her legs under the table, but the waiter's eyes made her look down again. The manager whispered something at the counter, and two rich guests laughed, pointing toward them. James kept his head low, his clothes old, his hands calloused from years of work. He had once owned an office downtown before losing everything in a merger that crushed him. Now he was just another man struggling to keep his child fed when the waiter finally walked. However, his tone was cold. "Sir, I'm sorry, but this table is reserved. You'll have to leave." James looked at the empty chairs around them and said quietly, "We'll finish quickly." The waiter sighed. "I said it's reserved, sir. Please don't make a scene." Emma looked at her father, her small hand slipping into his. She whispered softly, "It's okay, Daddy, we can leave." James felt something tear inside him. He nodded, stood up and took her hand again, walking toward the door, the laughter behind them louder. Now outside, the rain hit harder. Emma's tiny shoes splashed through puddles. James tried to smile, but his throat tightened. "I'm sorry, sweetheart. We'll find another place." She looked up at him and said, "It's okay, Daddy. We don't need food. We just need home." Those words broke him more than hunger ever could. He lifted her into his arms, holding her close, his heart pounding with guilt and love. He didn't know that someone else had been watching from across the diner, a man in a black car with tinted windows, the billionaire CEO Ethan Cross, who owned the very company that had destroyed James's career. Ethan had come to that small diner to escape a board meeting that felt more like a cage. He had seen everything: the humiliation, the quiet dignity, the little girl's kindness, and something inside him shifted, a memory maybe of his own childhood, before wealth had erased it. As the car drove him away, he couldn't stop thinking about her voice, soft and forgiving. "It's okay, Daddy, we can leave." He repeated it over and over like a ghost following him through the night. That night the city never slept, but Ethan Cross didn't either. His mind kept replaying that small scene in the diner, the look in James's tired eyes, the strength in that little girl's voice. He sat alone in his penthouse, surrounded by silence. Everything around him was perfect, polished, expensive. Yet suddenly it all felt empty. The wine untouched, the walls too quiet. He remembered his own childhood, a single father who worked until his hands cracked, a boy who once said the same words, "It's okay, Dad, we can leave," and then watched his father break by morning. Ethan couldn't ignore it anymore. He called his driver. "Take me to the diner." The staff looked startled when he walked in his tailored suit. They straightened nervously. "Yes, sir, private table." He shook his head. "No, just coffee, and tell me about the man who was here last night with the little girl." The waitress blinked. "Oh, the one with the blue jacket," she whispered. He nodded. She looked away. "He comes sometimes, never stays long. He's a good man, just unlucky." Ethan's chest tightened. "Where does he live?" She hesitated, unsure if she should answer. Ethan placed his card on the counter. "Tell him Ethan Cross needs to see him." That evening, James sat in his tiny apartment fixing a broken chair, Emma drawing quietly on the floor. There was a knock on the door. He opened it to find a man he'd only ever seen on television, Ethan Cross, himself standing there holding 2 bags of food. James froze, thinking it was some kind of joke. Ethan smiled gently. "I figured it's my turn to buy dinner." James stammered, "I don't understand." Ethan stepped inside, looking around the worn furniture. "I owe you an apology. Last night I saw something I can't unsee." He looked at Emma, then back at him. "You reminded me what real strength looks like." They sat down together, Emma's laughter softening the air. Ethan watched the two of them eat as if they hadn't in days, and something inside him healed just a little. He finally spoke again. "James, I looked into your story, the merger that cost you your job. That was my company, my decision. I thought cutting costs would make us more efficient. I never thought about who it destroyed." James froze, staring at him. Ethan continued quietly. "I can't undo the past, but maybe I can change the future." Ethan's voice was calm, but his eyes carried guilt. James stared at him, unsure if this was pity or kindness. His daughter looked between them, confused. "Daddy, is he your friend?" Ethan smiled gently. Not yet, but maybe one day. Emma's smile was so innocent it almost hurt Ethan's chest. He pulled out a brown envelope, sliding it across the table. "These are your papers," James frowned. "What papers?" Ethan took a deep breath. "Your company's ownership, the one you lost years ago, it's yours again. I bought out the investors who buried you. I want you to rebuild it your way." James was speechless, his hands trembling. Emma looked at him. "Daddy, is that good news?" He couldn't even answer. His eyes filled with tears. Ethan said softly, "I ruined you once without even knowing. I was just chasing numbers. I never stopped to see the faces behind them. Last night your daughter reminded me what humanity looks like. She made me remember my father and the man I swore I'd become." James looked at him, broken and grateful at once. "I don't know how to thank you." Ethan shook his head. "Don't thank me. Just promise me one thing when you build again. Build with heart, not hunger." Weeks passed. The city buzzed with headlines. Billionaire CEO reverses layoffs, restores local businesses. Ethan's name, once synonymous with greed, was now tied to redemption. He visited James's factory often, not as an owner but as a learner, watching people work with pride. He realized that purpose felt richer than profit. Emma became the company's little mascot, greeting everyone with her tiny smile, the one that had melted an empire's heart. One evening, as the sun dipped low, James stood outside his rebuilt factory. Ethan beside him, watching families leave. After a long day of work, Emma ran up with 2 paper cups of lemonade, one for each of them. She said, "Proudly, Daddy. I told my friends you're a builder again." James lifted her up, smiling through tears. "I couldn't have done it without you, kiddo." Ethan looked at them quietly and said, "Actually, she's the one who changed everything." The 3 of them stood together, watching the lights come on across the factory that had once been lost but was now alive again. And for the first time in years, Ethan felt like a man, not a machine. He finally understood that the smallest hearts often carry the biggest lessons. If this story made you smile, share it with someone who needs a reminder that accidents can turn into beautiful beginnings.